Hey, how's it going? In this video, I'm going to be talking about fusion electricity and what that is. Fusion electricity typically refers to a concept of generated, generating electricity throughout nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion is a process in which two light atomic nuclei combines to form heavier nucleus, releasing a tremendous amount of energy in the process. This is the same process that powers the sun and other stars. What we are talking about, we're talking about large amount of energy that we can potentially there's perhaps there's some risk involved, but overall there's a lot of opportunities there. Unlike nuclear fusion, which is the process of used in the most current nuclear powers plants and involves splitting heavy atomic nuclei, nuclear fusion has several potential advantages for electricity generation. Abundant fuel fusion used isotopes of hydrogen, such as deuterium and tritium as fuel. These isotopes are abundant and can be extracted from water and lithium, respectively. So potentially there's abundant. So there's a lot of resources out there. That's positive thing, I guess. Safety fusion reaction produce less long-lived radioactive waste compared to fusion reactions, making it a potentially safer option. Compared to other alternatives there right now, there's a safer option. No chain reactions. Fusion electricity are not self-sustaining like fusion reactions, so there is no risk of runaway chain reactions or nuclear meltdown. There is perhaps not this particular way, but perhaps there's some risk involved. That's what I'm trying to highlight here. No greenhouse gases emissions. Fusion does not produce carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases, making it potentially clear and sustainable energy source. High energy output. Fusion has the potential to produce large amounts of energy from a small amount of fuel, which could meet global energy demands. I don't know how much of you are following currently geopolitics and what's happening right now. Some of the top countries out there is struggling with overall output of energy. Some of the South Africa, other parts in Africa, as well as top countries out there. Germany is struggling with the energy just because of where it can buy cheap energy from, as well as perhaps China burning of coal to produce energy. I don't know if I can keep dropping names. How much of those countries are there struggling with cheap amount of based on the output of industrial, they cannot source the energy very cheaply. So there's constantly up there and I'm looking in the market where they could potentially create, build, reinvent, invent, or improve current systems, right? If some other countries need to pay double just because of a changing in economy, or for some reason some of the countries become most expensive energy paying countries in the world, especially during winter seasons. What I'm saying is there's a lot of potential there, and some of the countries even now are looking to source some of the projects that are interested in developing some of potential solutions to some of those problems, right? So there are more variables involved, but other than that, what I'm saying is there are potential again, or where that's if anything, focus of this video is not if not this particular way, what are alternatives to that? And hydro energy, wind energy, and solar energy as well as in this particular video I'm focusing on different types of energy. When talking about fusion electricity, there are significant technical challenges in achieving controlled nuclear fusion for electricity generation. The main challenges is creating and maintaining the extreme conditions of temperature and pressure required for fuel to undergo fusion. This is typically done using magnetic confinement, which is very interesting. It's sort of very interesting figure, and how they are planning to reduce any friction with the air and increase speed. Uh, I believe there was Russian scientist who came up with this particular way of producing energy, and from there it was adapted worldwide, where people are trying all kind of things, way to improve the system and perhaps finding use cases and some of the interesting projects going on right there right now in the world. But either way, i.e., tokamaks or interstellar confinement, or there's a name for it, i.e., laser fusion, and some other technologies. So, what I'm saying is, perhaps currently, how much to build facilities and prototyping might be a very expensive thing to do. But there are perhaps some people who are trying to invent new ways of producing electricity. Looking at the history of fusion electricity, specifically the pursuit of control nuclear fusion for electricity generation. It spans many decades, so it's been a big problem, and most likely there was hundreds of people who were trying to solve this particular problem, if not thousands, right? Early theoretical work in the 20th century, the concept of nuclear fusion as a potential energy source was first explored in the early 20th century. Scientific scientists like Arthur Eddington and Hans Bethe developed the theory of stellar nucleosynthesis, which explain how fusion powers stars like a sun. So that potential, that was the starting point, I guess. H bombs and thermonuclear fusion, 1940s, 1950s, the development of hydrogen bombs during World War II, and in the post-war period made a significant milestone in the understanding of nuclear fusion. It demonstrated that the controlled fusion reaction could release vast amount of energy. So it's somehow experimenting to have to taken place. Early fusion experiments. Researchers began conducting experiments to achieve controlled nuclear fusion on Earth. One of the first approaches involved magnetic confinement, exemplified by the stellarator development by Lim Splizer and the Tokmak, Russian acronym for toroidal chamber with magnetic coils, developed by Igor Tam and Andrei Shakharov. So I personally believe that was a starting block, and how they put those magnets in order to move in confinement, as well as achieve very significant speeds inside the confinement. So it's something that I have done a little bit of research on, and I thought that's where everything had started. Tokamaks development in 1950s, 1970s. The tokamaks became a prominent device for plasma confinement in the 1960s and 1970s. Notable tomats like T3 in Soviet Union and Chet, joint European and Taurus in Europe demonstrate the feasibility of achieving high temperature plasma and small scale nuclear fusion. So it has been proven to some extent, I guess. ITER project, 1980s all the way to present moment, International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor project was initiated, representing a major international effort to develop nuclear in control fusion for energy production. Hatcher aims to be the first experimental to produce more energy from fusion reaction than it's required to heat the plasma to the necessary temperature. Right. So overall, in other words, they looking at the all heating process and everything. It would require some sort of energy. So it would be break even point or positive point. So it would produce more energy than it would require itself to run it. Alternative approaches, 1980s all the way to present moment. In addition to Tokama, that particular confinement, other fusion approaches like interstellar confinement fusion, using lasers or ion beams to compress and heat fusion fuels have been explored. Facilities like National Ignition Facilities (NIF) in the United States have made significant progress in. I have read about this particular project. They have recently, in the last couple of years or so, for the first time, this project was built for more than 25 years plus years in US, where they're using lasers to produce more electricity than the lasers will consume themselves. All the facilities, as you can imagine, to build those facilities and age of those facilities for the first time and produce electricity, right? Lasers. So it produced more electricity. I don't know if it was a break or even point, just because of how old the equipment can be after all these years. But there's some positive there and how large facility needs to be. You can do more research on this particular subject. So there are some projects out there who are doing interesting things there. For those of you who are interested in learning more, I would highly recommend to purchase this journal. In this journal, I'm sharing a lot of information for those of you who are interested in learning more. I'm focusing on areas that I personally believe are very important. Structuring this journal around time and making most of the 24 hours that we all have up there, and how to structure your time. That would be areas and where to begin. Some of the areas, perhaps motivation, from motivation, focusing on perhaps dictionary and improving 500 words that we constantly using every single day, and having a wider dictionary might improve the way how you think and perhaps approach different situations. As well as in this channel, I'm sharing other areas which I personally believe are important. That would be physical activity, personal growth, continuous learning, time management, values, just to name a few. You can find this journal in the description below, as well as top retailers has it. Uh, there has been a lot of work done with this particular area. They're constantly looking for teams who are interested in perhaps delivering or being able to, even right now, currently, there's a lot of funding in this area, as you probably can imagine, based on demand currently in the world. There's a large demand for cheap electricity or energy. There's a large demand, massive demand, right? So there's a lot of funding in there. So I'm covering with some of those topics because I personally believe those topics are important, as well as there are a lot of opportunities there. There are a lot of interesting projects there where people are coming up with interesting ways with sand and how sand can store energy. What I'm saying, there's a lot of talented people in space. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next one.